Welcome everybody to the SGBL podcast. This is episode 2, and I'm here with my guest today, Hunky Dunky. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing fine. It's gonna be a long uh week ahead, but I'm excited for you. And I'm
I
excited
can
for this
imagine.
podcast.
I can imagine for you, dude. I know we've been talking here and there about all the things you got going, and we talk quite a bit about draft league in general and everything. One of the reasons I actually wanted to talk to you was, part of it of how you joined our league, last season, but also like you've been one of my favorite people in our community that did join last season. And you seem like a really interesting dude. I kind of like your takes on Mons and everything from the little I've seen so far and everything of the sort. And you've proven yourself to be one of the best battlers out there, I think, right now. So that's one of the biggest things. How you been though overall, man? Like what's been up with you?
Oh well, first of all, I'm really flattered that you think all of that. I feel like I have some things to improve on, but I'm looking forward to it as time goes on. As for how I'm feeling, I'm doing good. I started draft like May, June 2023. So it's been a nice 6 months. It's been a good journey.
Oh,
I Yep. I think I met you the first time and Adam in the DCDL league a while back where you 5-0'd me and I was like, nope, I had to improve and be better. And for funny enough, our specific match made me realize made me encourage myself to like study the draft league scene more and improve. And that accumulated into me joining this server eventually as a Relical Red off-season league replacement coach, and I got lucky enough to get accepted, and I just like revamped my whole team from there and went for broke.
yeah, for sure. So you talked about starting just 6 months ago, which is really cool to see because your growth has been quite tremendous, and especially within our league, you've been very successful in the early stages because we're a league that's only about 7, 8 months old right now. And actually we're a little bit over 7 months right now. And you've been one of the first champions we have in one of our divisions. So what was the so just talk about you talked about join starting a few months ago, but what was your reasoning for wanting to do draft in the first place?
That's interesting because I just I felt like the draft as a concept is something I really liked, especially the actual drafting process itself and the team building
Mhm.
process. I started to get to fantasy football and fantasy basketball at the time, but and then I just saw I think Pokey Aim's first draft league video. And I was like, damn, I want to do that. So I tried to find any show. I tried to reach out to any smoke on forums, anything like that. Couldn't find anything until I saw a bunch of Discord links. So at first I was a little worried because I haven't used Discord since like 2020, but I met such great good community with everyone here, and I found I'm in 47 different servers right now, which is
That's one way
nutty.
to count to 47.
Yeah, I just made that up, but it's around like 50 for sure.
Yeah, I think I catch myself and I'm in a bunch of servers just but for me starting up a couple years ago into draft, it's similar in the sense of you just try to join as many places as possible. And, I know early on for myself, it was really difficult to get into a league, at least in the sense of when they actually started their draft, right? I was able to get my, name into a few leagues by replacing people. But that was kind of like how I kind of got started into it, where I was just replacing teams, but I never actually got to draft a team for myself until like a couple months in. And you kind of have a little bit of a definitely a similar start to how you joined our league.
Yeah.
And that reminds me actually, how did you find us again? I think you mentioned it briefly, but where did you find us from?
Well, it was in a Slurpee. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Matsuri, Slurpee, and Collins
Yep.
server, the DCDL
Yeah.
league.
Mhm.
That was actually the first time I like. I wasn't a replacement too. I was in a couple other draft leagues by then, like at the time, but I was always a replacement. So it was the
Yeah.
first, and I joined last minute too. I was like the last person immediately there. And then I just saw the plug channel. I was like, why not? I'll join Mr. Spiel and Mr. Gibble's league. And here we are.
So wait, what was like the wait? So what was the order? Because you talked about we played in DCDL apparently. We're talking about this past season that just finished for their league because
Yeah.
they don't run. They're not running seasons, as often as like we are, where we're running it a few times a year. Oh, I remember. Yeah, and I remember our battle. I remember having the conversation with you, and you were still relatively new. I mean, like we're talking about like several months ago now. You definitely were super new, and I remember the battle was what it was. I think you totally got your revenge on me not too long afterwards, though, when you joined our league, and I believe you smoked me in Rad Red. So there was
I
definitely a change there.
Yeah, I don't remember battling you actually. I wanted to. I wanted to get my I wanted to get my get back soon, but I beat Adam. I don't think I ever had a chance to versus you.
If you ever beat up them, then it's pretty much it feels like I'm the one who got beat too because we actually never help each other prep for the most part. We
Seriously?
just look at each other's preps, we criticize each other, and then we don't give any any reasonable prep advice. So yeah, I don't. I'll be honest, we don't. I could care less about if you've ever beaten him or anything. I know you beat him in the playoff game, and you really came in, super well prepared and everything.
Yeah,
And
man,
oh, actually, we
prepared.
did dodge each other. What was? I'm trying to think. I could have swore we played.
I
I
mean,
was
I
just
don't
looking at
maybe week one, but because
No,
I
it
wasn't
wasn't. If it was week one, no, we didn't. I could have swore because I remembered I remember you beating Aldim in the playoff game, right?
right.
And Aldim mentioned because he played, maybe because we had a lot of conversations about it. He mentioned how when he played your team, the team that he played before was someone else's, and it was a completely different team. And he destroyed that team with Swellow. Like if you ever went back and watched that game, he won in something like 9 turns, just clicking specs boomers with Swellow, and it wasn't even a game. And,
Oh man.
and then with the team you constructed, and I was like, man, Alden, how'd you lose? And you destroyed this person last time. He's like, very different player, very different team. I couldn't just click specs boomers 6 times. And I was like, well, that's probably fair. You probably shouldn't have won the last time that easily either. So um it's definitely super. It's definitely, but you definitely proved yourself because them actually is like one of the better Rad Red players out there. And I don't know, did you ever play a Rad Red? I mean, you're so new. Did you ever play a
That was
Rad
my
Red
first
season?
that was my first league. This one was my first Red league.
Jeez, dude. And you got a chip right off the bat. I would say like some of the off meta stuff, it may be a little bit easier to sometimes win because people are like even our league. Like we have a couple people with some experience, but most like a lot of people are playing it for the first time, like in our draft format. And even if you played the games, there's a great chance you didn't deal with all of these different mons and their changes and everything too at the same time. So it's definitely super. It's definitely a super different, kind of meta to play in. But
Yeah, that's the only reason why I drafted Love Disc. I mean, are you kidding me? I would
Love
never
Disc
draft
is
this next Love Disc.
yeah, Love Disc is definitely maybe slightly under tiered, especially with Soul Heart. Um, it's, it's such an interesting mon to use, and only in that format you could use Love Disc in a like really competitive way that actually makes sense and works.
To be fair, the only match I did bring it in, I got kind of lucky with the switch-ins, but the other two low tiers I had, Avalok, Hisui, and mine, and put in a lot of work. I'm really happy
Mhm.
with how they turned out.
Yeah, I would say that's probably like one of my favorite things for Rad Red in general. I feel like it's the one meta where you're low. Well, there's so many fun low tier threats. Like sometimes people are like, "Oh, why do you have this so low, or why is this low?" Whatever. I'm like, so many things got buffed. Like almost like everything would get shifted over a couple points higher. But it's like, are you just gonna ban mons or put things at 22? No, you're probably gonna just adjust things a little bit, and you'll keep mons give or take where they are, and slightly buff certain mons. Like, like a Dusknor, like a Minen, like there's mons like that that you may bump up a couple points as opposed to being 1 point or nothing. Now there's like there's some value now to these mons, and but Red does it really well where there's so many good low tier threats. So talk about a little bit since we're on Red. What was maybe like your highlights from the season? You did win the championship.
Oh no,
Uh,
I didn't win the
oh,
championship.
my apologies. You lost. You got to the championship. I meant to
Yeah.
say got
Yeah,
to the
Galaxy was
championship.
one. Great.
Yeah, Galaxy won. Got to the championship. Great season overall, though. I mean, I think were you the 1 seed? Wait, no, you were one. Where were you? You were the 8 seed. You took over a team that was struggling like crazy. Got to the championship against Galaxy. Had a great run through to the finals. What were you say are some of your highlights from the season itself?
Like, I think I don't know. I think it's just a few, hmm. It's hard to like pinpoint one thing because it's all been a blur at this point, to be honest. My favorite part, of course, has to be me actually like getting the team in the
Mhm,
first place. You asking me to be your replacement, and then I saw like all these cool mons that I
mhm,
wanted to like change out. The that plus like a couple other fights, but my first match against Galaxy where I just barely hung on 1-0
yeah,
and won. I think that's one of my favorite matches I ever played. There was one against Dango I really played that I really liked, and all of my playoff matches beating Breaker. Like I
mhm.
didn't think beating Breaker was possible in the first round of playoffs, but I had some help prepping, and that like took me far
Yeah,
into the
Breaker
league.
was he actually won our spiel our low he was our lowest division, which again for our players in our first NatDeck season, he won our lowest division and he was like one of the better battlers for sure out there. And when you come to starting up a league and bringing people on, he was another really new person though, very new person. Dominated this field division as we had in NatDex. Came onto Red, and he was the 1 seed going into the playoffs. And you pulled off an upset there, which I was funny looking at it because you lost the game 3-0 at the end of the regular season. Um, you could have actually missed the playoffs because you barely made it in.
Yeah, I got really lucky, I'm not gonna lie, with some lightweights.
It's funny looking because 4-4 -3. Again, you took over a team, so you were behind the 8 ball to start off. But no, you had a heck of a run. What would you say were your favorite? You talked about the low tiers. What was your favorite like Mon or Mons? Maybe outside.
Honestly, all of them have been such a fundamental glue piece to my team that like I'm not really that mad at like picking any of them. I can't like pick a favorite because I just like picked all of the ones I want to try out. Like I want to try Hoopa Unbound. I want to try Conk Melodic for the first time. Since it was a new player, I barely got to like try these mons. I never got to try these mons. The only mon I kept was Shadow Tag Chandelier because like how could he not? It's so fun. My
Oh,
favorite would probably if it isn't Minen or Evla Kasui.
mhm.
It'll probably be Sceptile. Mega Sceptile with the technician boost and everything. It's been really nice
No,
for me.
yeah, Sceptile Mega, dude. We'll talk about one of like those mons that got very improved in this format. Um, like people sometimes ask like, why is Mega Sceptile so high? Why is Mega Sceptile so high? And I just say, look at the change in its stats. Being a physical attacker, keeping that ridiculous speed, and then you now have a mon with some of the best coverage it could possibly have. It has SD. You could run scale shot, but I think dual chop's like the more consistent move in general. Bullet seed, like really, really strong moves that technician can buff. And it just hits so hard. And again, because it doesn't naturally get Draco, like in the regular game, it's kind of hard to use it, in traditional nat decks. Where here they made it, really highly valued, and it's one of the toughest mons to prep for. And then when
Yeah,
you
I
pair it with
mean,
Chandelier too, I like, dude, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I got really lucky that the previous coach managed to snag Chandler. But like I feel like Sceptile Mega is like a Pokemon like you know those mons like before you play competitive you're like you
Uh,
really really like the designs
yeah.
like your childhood favorite mons and then when you play them in competitive like something like Luxray for example you're like damn this fun is garbage dude butter I hate but it's so having like a few of those mons like Mega Sceptile it's nice too that's the only reason why I picked it it's actually like good it's
Yeah.
good I get to use it why
Yeah,
not.
I think it's definitely one of those mons that it's like that's one of the things that I do like about this format. Sometimes people complain about, oh, they just buff things and they just give things way too many moves and way too many options and everything. And I'm like, man, they made Turtonator a good mon in this format.
Wait, really? They did?
So I
What
guess
buffs did they
Dauntless
get?
Shield. Dauntless Shield also doesn't have the nerf that it has currently in the Nat decks.
Wow, that's so cool.
So, but also Bashadon gets that ability. You know, a couple mons get that ability and gives them real viability. Turtonator is one of my favorite mons in general to use. It's like a 5 pointer normally, and you know, when you have that kind of natural defense, it's like comical when you start doing calcs with what it can live. For me, Turtonator was like I used it in another season. I used that as my way to beat Mega Sceptile. Funny enough.
Like in the Radical Red or in that
Yeah,
deck?
Radical Red, not in yeah, not in NatDex. I would never use it in NatDex conventional. But in Radical Red, because of that +1, it was like bulky enough to like live a dual chop at like times 2 or 4. I forgot the exact calc. And then you just drop a Draco on Sceptile and kill it, and it's just like, oh, we're fine here. And you just run boots on it, it gets rapid spin, like it has really, really cool moves, and it's just like such a nice mon. It was definitely one of my favorites to use.
Yeah, that sounds super fun. I might need to draft that next for
Yeah,
the Red
definitely
League you're hosting.
our future Ride Red leagues. So talk about kind of transitioning from like, one off meta format, you've played NatDex obviously. What formats have you enjoyed playing the most? And in and to continue on to that, in addition, what formats is there any formats that you are interested in playing in the future that you have not yet?
Well, I definitely want to dabble into the Insurgents meta. I
Mhm.
have a few people talk to me about like the darkness and the trick room extending item. I think that stuff is really, really cool. Like some of my previous favorites was a regular NatDex league. My
Mhm.
first league actually that I participated in, it's basically just a regular NatDex league, but you get contracts for Pokemon. So like you get them for like usually a season's like a 5 week season, so it's kind of short, but it's
Mhm.
cool. You get to keep some Pokemon for 2 or 3 seasons. You get to trade them before the draft even starts. Stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
That's
Yeah.
kind of how Draft League was intended to be when it started, was where you have mons kept like in like you play fantasy football. You ever hear of like legacy players or something? Like
Oh yeah, for sure, man. But
you
like I barely play, but even I know like stuff like
Yeah.
that.
But that's initially what Draft League was intended to be like. It was meant to be so the person who started it, that was their thing. They wanted it to be like fantasy sports and running an actual team where you could sign these mons or players, whatever you want to call it, to contracts. So you get to actually keep a few of these mons over the lifespan of the league itself. It kind of got phased out, but I think it's coming back as alternative, formats for people to run, similar in fantasy, where regular fantasy sports, where people just want to draft a new team every year. Mons has kind of developed into that mainly, but there's still people who want to dabble into that format.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's really cool. I only seen like 2 or 3 leagues implement it successfully so far, but I'm excited to see how the future goes for that type of formats.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely interesting. I'm excited to see, I'm excited to see leagues do it. Again, more leagues do different things. I think it's better for the community as a whole. We try to, even though we're not doing anything overly, different, we're trying to run at least run the league as efficiency and as properly as possible where, some of the deficiencies of others, we don't wanna make as a mistake on our end. So, that's, I think, been our most positive strength up until this point, and that's been almost our only differentiating factor, but, um, it's worked out for us pretty well so far, and I'm hoping to incorporate other formats as people wanna keep adding them on, similar to this team tour that we're running right now. That was not my idea, that was one of our mods who wanted to do it, so we
Yeah.
started doing things as they say.
So I mean, it's been successful, right? I like everything you guys or you and the mods have incorporated. This is my first team tour too,
Mhm.
actually. So I really like how the format is. This it's a community it brings and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the goal, right? You always wanna bring people together, make people care. Again, I think one of my favorite things to hear about season 1 for us in our Nat Deck season was people talking about this is like one of the first like, people would say, "This is one of the first seasons where I actually cared about who the other players and teams were compared to other leagues." And I'm like, "That's really cool to hear." So, even though you're kinda new to draft, though, what would you say is, like what makes a season fun for you so far? Like, in your experience, what has been, like, some of the differentiating factors, and this is what made me enjoy the season more or less?
Well, first of all, it's definitely the people, the community you're in,
Mhm.
how like you treat each other, how you cultivate not cultivate relationships per se, but like more how do you cultivate a bond between two players and even in a battle and prepping, even between mods and like I've seen examples of a couple of leagues where the mods were not like the greatest
Yeah.
like at all. So just having a mutual respect for each other, being less salty as I mean, salt is inevitably gonna happen. That's just how mods is, and it's okay to be upset, but not letting it cloud your judgment, or like the leagues that don't have people that don't let it cloud their judgment is usually where they thrive because all you can do from there is just grow and improve.
Yeah, I think that's I'm in a similar boat. I think from my experience, I I would say, like, one of the things that made me enjoy seasons more than anything else is when you actually have people care about the other games. When you have people actually interacting with each other, right? That's not always prevalent in a league. There was a season where I won the championship in a league. The mods like said one quick comment. My opponent and I spoke a little bit, a few messages back and forth, and then that was it. It was over. And I was like, man, it's like nobody cared about the season in itself, because people that wasn't just during that week. The rest of the season was the same way. Like, people sometimes would talk about their games afterwards, sometimes they didn't. No one really cared though. It was like season came, gone. It's over, it's done with. Week is in and out. Those always bothered me as an individual because I'm like, man, it's just like it's not as fun. I'd rather lose at the end of it, but I got to joke with everyone within the division and have a good time with them.
Oh, that's interesting. So is that why you like welcome and like try to talk to every new person that joins this server, the SGBL server?
Yeah, again, that's part of it, right? That's how we got started. When we started it 8 months ago or 7 months ago, I'm kind of the timing a little bit off now. We're getting into that near year range. Every single person who joined, in the beginning, we wanted to try to have enough people for a division. So I wanted people to feel welcomed, right? And if you initiate the conversation with people, and, it's not just putting the sticker that automatically comes up on Discord, right? Where it's like, "Oh, here's your sticker, and there you go," and we don't say anything. It's, "Let me actually reference you as an individual. Hey, how are you doing?" Whatever. From there, have the basic conversation. We kinda developed my pattern of what I'm gonna say to people at this point. I know people have mocked or not mocked, but, like, mimicked it at times when I wasn't around, and I would see sometimes my mods say, "Oh, where did you find us from?" Or "Hey, how are you doing?" and all this stuff, and literally copying my, like, mannerisms. So it's kind of funny to see, but But that's the thing, right? You want people to feel welcome because if someone feels welcome, they're more likely to be interactive, they're more likely to be participant within things, they're more likely to talk with other people. And again, that's the goal, in my opinion. You want people to interact, you want people to be a part of it. And if you don't do that, all it is it's just going to be a game that they do play and then they're done with, and they're not going to care if they actually even play their games or not. And I want people to actually care about playing, whether they're having a good season or bad season. The goal is have fun with the formats as much as possible, but have fun within the community more so, because there's a lot of good people within our server, and you don't have to like me, but you'll probably find a bunch of people that you'll like. So that's usually the goal.
Yeah, so you said that's only part of the reason why. Is there any other like incentive you had for creating this league?
No, I just the reason, well, for myself, it was more so I wanted to create a league because I was sick of leagues that I was joining, shutting down or not running their leagues properly. And I got sick of it. And I was just like, I just want to be able to play formats that I enjoy over the course of a year, right? So the idea for me before the team tour has kind of been a different ad for us, but it's been for me it was I want to do Nat decks. After I do Nat decks, I want to do some of our off meta stuff. After we do our off meta season, we take a little bit of a break, which was supposed to be this time, and then we go back into traditional Nat decks or whatever. So that's kind of how I figured it, right? In 3 month intervals, 3 months of Nat decks, 3 months of off meta, 3 months of speed tour tournaments, things of that nature. Because we were supposed to do a random battle tournament at this time. We're probably pushing that off for another month, I would say, before we get into DLC two Nat decks. And from there, that was supposed to be the idea of this 3 month gap. We were going to fill it up with tournaments and speed tour stuff. The team tour kind of overtook that. So we're just getting through the first week of team tour. Once we do that, we'll start to get the speed tour stuff implemented and everything. And then national deck season two or season three overall, that's going to start sometime in December to January, whenever if DLC two drops in December, we'll probably start the season around January, like after the first week of January. Um, get people past that Christmas break.
Yeah, I'm excited to, well, let's see if I get in, but I'm excited to
You'll
participate.
get it if you apply.
Okay, I
Again,
didn't want to speak too egotistically. I can't wait to.
no, again, again, like one of the things for us is if you played in our league, and we now, I guess the only thing is like the space, right? Them and I
Right.
have one thing we've discussed is how many divisions we do run. Do we want to run five still? Are we going to bump that up to seven if it's potentially possible? We're gonna We'll see with the applications. We'll see with the people we know. We promoted from within for the off season. So everyone who was within our league already from NatDex one, if they applied, they got an automatic position. So at least one format. And for us, it was okay. We'll fill up with as many people as possible with that, and excuse me. And then from there, we're going to add new people, and we'll start advertising outside of the server. Um, as opposed to the first season, which was just promote from outside the server because we had no one within the server. It was just them and myself, and we got a bunch of applications that way. Like that was a crazy few days, but we were able to fill it up and have a fun season. Um, but yeah, I think you're going to see more and more of that the more you get into the format, and it'll be you'll definitely see it, especially if you start getting into with other leagues. Hopefully, you don't have leagues that run poorly, but you'll probably end up seeing. You'll either be a part of it or you'll see your friends talk about it. Like, man, this league doesn't update their docs. Man, people are not that into it. It's frustrating, but hopefully, you never have to deal with it.
So, as a more experienced player in the
Mhm,
Death League scene, I want to ask, like, from someone like when you first started out, or even where I am at right now, and
mhm.
where you at right now, what beliefs or like what staff in the draft and like the draft league scene, whether it be in the community or in actually playing, what beliefs have like evolved from where you were at when like at like 6 months like me till now for a couple of years.
Now, this could be a fun question to ask you in return, though. Are you talking about in terms of like competitive building? Are you talking about
Anything,
running
just
league
like what
itself?
has evolved from your like draft like thinking in terms of like what the draft league scene is and stuff.
I'll be honest with you. From running a league, there's little things here and there that I always try to fix up, and I think we always want to get better at in terms of operating and running, making sure we're tighter with our rules, making sure we have things accounted for, and we constantly are trying to fix that up as we go. But in terms of what I wanted as like a macro sense of things, really nothing in terms of like for me it just I want people to be engaged. That's always the goal. It's not about having 200, 500, 1,000 people. I didn't care about that. My only goal was I wanted enough consistent people where we could run these fun formats that I want to do over each season. So if it was one division a season, but one division, one each season we do, hey, we're gonna do Natdex this season, Red next season, Ubers this season, whatever it was, that would have been fine with me. I would have been more than happy. We've grown a lot because a lot of people have had fun here, and but that part hasn't really changed. In terms of competitive, again, early on, I would just say like EV investing. I always had a pretty decent understanding of Mons, but how to invest my EVs properly in terms of like my bulk and not needing to invest everything into attack. Not just going 252 attack or special attack. Those are like, but that's you learn with experience. You realize how to properly invest, accordingly when you're not lazy as an individual. That's sometimes the bigger thing in Mons. It's not about being super good, it's about having the time or the care to do it. But what about yourself? What has been your biggest change in terms of your thought about draft league and prepping and things of that nature?
Okay, so I did play OU a decent amount, like
Mhm,
not too much. I was like within the 1300, 1400 range
mhm,
max. But like as for draft league, I didn't, of course there's like the general stuff like better team building, good synergy, actually EV investing in your mods to
mhm,
like be to a specific matchup. But there's also before I used to like make heat or like really, really quote unquote heat, but actually stupid stats for the
mhm,
sake of catching my opponents off guard. And
mhm.
that also reflected my playstyle. I always try to make predictions because I didn't realize that sometimes safe plays is the best play to position yourself into a better I guess position again, but like just like a better circumstance, which is something I didn't really grasp when I first played Draft League, and it's something like I think the shift actually happened a lot when I was prepping for playoffs for this league in the Radical Red League. Right now, I'm trying to improve. Like I think I'm playing a little bit too safely when it comes to sets right now, so I'm like in the opposite end of the spectrum. So going on forward, I want to like strike a balance between like make like draftly format be creative. I want to embrace that creativity more. I also want to actually be good while doing it.
Yeah.
So think striking a balance between the two is the best way to go going forward, which is something I'm trying to improve in.
What do you think has impacted your mindset in terms of, hey, I want to be creative and use this heat, quote unquote, or I want to make the right predictions or whatever? What's been like the one thing you think holding you back from maybe to the level you want to get at, right? Where you are comfortable with that and you make the plays, understanding the consequences each time you do it, and you're comfortable with it. What do you think's been holding you back from getting to that level so far, outside of experience, of course?
Well, simply the opponents aren't me. I can't always predict what they're gonna do. I can't. Oh, sometimes they're gonna be smarter. They're gonna play smarter than me.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they're even gonna play dumber than me. But it's on me to always try to adapt to make like strike the best, like what I said before, strike the best balance possible between
Mhm.
what is a safe play and when is the right time to actually make a prediction. And yeah, I mean, like I've tried to watch replays of other people to see how they, like you or Adam, for example.
Mhm.
I remember seeing a couple of games in Practical Red, DCDL, a few other leagues, and I just try to like simply copy, not copy, but like set, except try to like get a mentality similar to those people who I think are better than me in draft leagues, so I could try to improve and just be the best at that I can be.
Yeah, I would say, like, I think it's always important to understand, like, why someone makes a play. You almost cannot watch it live and understand why they made a play. You have to almost have an idea what was their team as a whole and why they made certain plays as they did, right? Because sometimes you'll see someone make a play and you're like, oh, that seems crazy. They could have sacked a certain mon or whatever. Meanwhile, from that person's perspective, maybe they had a scarfer in the back that they knew I can't lose this, so I'm gonna make a risky play with this mon that's out on the field or whatever. And just having that whole understanding of everything as a in the totality, understanding win cons and everything, and then maybe making, and again, part of it also is matchups, right? Sometimes I go into matchups personally and I'll talk with, them about it. I'll joke with them. I'm like, hey, all I have to do is make 10 correct predictions and I'll win. And making one correct prediction in a game, like a hard prediction, not a safe pivot or mid ground, like a real, like, you could lose kind of stuff, it could be risky in itself. But I always think of it as just as a collective of what my team or whatever is. That's what kind of determines my plays as a whole. I don't, if I make a play and my opponent reads me, I always try to think before I make that play. All right, if they did this, how does that impact me for the rest of this game? Can I come back in this game? Yes or no? And then I feel comfortable with the results no matter what. Because if I say, hey, I this may be my only chance to win, if they read me correctly, I'll probably lose. But if I play it too safe, I'm probably going to lose too. Sometimes, you just play out those scenarios, and being able to think of all of that on the fly is the difference. And a lot of times in terms of, oh, I won this game or I lost this game. And there's a lot of dynamics to it. There's a lot to think about, but when you get into it, you just process it all at once. And it takes longer to explain than to actually do during the midst of a battle.
Yeah, like I feel like it's easier to reflect on what exactly was the correct play and when you like watch the replay, but during the actual battle with all the adrenaline and stuff, sometimes like you gotta just do what your gut is telling you.
Dude, I saw a battle, from another league that I just joined, right? And someone set up with Torterra, Terrifier their Torterra with Shell Smash, and they got a kill on one Mon. And now the Torterra was at -1 defenses, and they already Terrified. The person proceeded to sack 4 Mons on their team, bring in Klefki, Thunderwave the Torterra, then bring in a Flygon and kill it with Earthquake. Meanwhile,
Uh,
you went and sacked so many things thinking they could take a hit from this, when the easiest play was go to Klefki, sack it, but T-waving, and then let Flygon just kill it with Earthquake. And then you have 4 Mons remaining to battle the remaining 4 or 5 that the opponent had. But it just like they didn't process it in the moment. And I remember talking with them about it. 'Cause I was like, why didn't you do that first? And they're like, honestly, I haven't played in 6 months. I forgot that I could paralyze it because forgot it Terra. Like, they just didn't process the information right. And it cost them the game ultimately. And it was a game that they actually had a chance to win still at the end with just Flygon because things were chipped just enough. But Flygon needed just a little bit more like support from its team, and it would have won for sure. And that's the game, right? You have to be able to process things in the moment and see what the outs are. Try not to auto lose them in prep, but during the game, when something surprising happens, figure out your way out of that. The experience
Yeah,
will get you there.
it's funny because before the only reason why I won like previously before I like actually knew how to prep properly was doing the opposite of that. Like sometimes having like an auto lose a situation in prep, but in the battle, in the moment, I know like I don't know, some things just clicked and I get lucky or I
Mhm.
actually played good and it works out. But now, like now that I actually know how to play better, it's hard. It feels harder to win sometimes because you like more knowledgeable and
Yeah.
you're not oblivious to like, oh, I could die to the stone edge,
Mhm.
or I don't have to. I'm just gonna switch into this possible fire blast. There's a 50% chance to miss. I'm just
Mhm.
gonna risk it, whatever, and it works, or it doesn't.
Yeah, it's definitely a different way to think about things, right? And especially when you're newer and you just like go with your head canon stats or your whatever, your head calcs or whatever on things like, yeah, I can live this, and then you proceed to die easily, and you know, you'll be like, oh, that shouldn't have hit, and it's like, nah, it's definitely you definitely are struggling because you're not processing things right. So you talked about some like fun mons that you've used in the past and everything. I kind of like this is what I mean when I like your approach and your growth overall, right? Because I remember that first battle that we had, which is weird. I remember a DCDL match better probably because we actually had that match unlike in Red Red. And I was going to say I remember that match. You were just like almost overwhelmed in that moment, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was just like, there's just some stuff that happened that day, and I didn't have time to schedule the battle anything anywhere else. So I just like, fuck it, let me just get this over with.
I
And
you know
I thought,
You know
sorry.
what's Oh, go. Oh, what I was gonna say actually is what was funny about that, I remembered when I remembered looking at the old chat about it, I was like, "Man, I don't get this dude," because I was thinking, like, in schedule, it's like, "Man, I'm trying to play this game, and he doesn't seem like you weren't like you were really busy or whatever at the time." And I forgot what you had, but it was just like I was just like, "Damn," like, after the battle happened, I was like, "Thank God this battle just finished," because I was so frustrated at that moment because I was doing too many leagues also. And I was like, anyone who, like, pushed me off, like, scheduling or, like, was get a little bit all over the place, I was even though if it was a little bit, like, the most minute bit of it, I was just like, I'm just so sick of this right now." And I was just like we played but we had our battle and everything, right? But fine, and you've grown and you actually finished ahead of me in the standings that season, regardless of those results. You
Wait,
know,
really?
I was the 6th seed, you were the 5th seed. Now, mind you, Matt gave me a forfeit loss for the last week of the regular season that I was not supposed to get, and I kind of, I was really upset with him on that. So, but he
I
gave
mean,
me a
you won the
forfeit loss.
championship, so that's like
Well, yeah.
insane.
Well, the
Yeah.
season ended great, but in terms of the regular season, when we did those power matchups, he gave me a forfeit loss because I was on vacation at the time. I was supposed to play. I think it was Aaron. From the other team, Aaron. We were supposed to play each other in the last game of the regular season. I was just gonna meme. I was like, okay, I this game doesn't matter. I'm in the playoffs. He's in the playoffs. I was just gonna build. I was on vacation, and I was like, okay, I'll build something while I'm on vacation and just play the game out. We scheduled the time and everything. I was like, hey, dude, you ready to play? Oh, I'm gonna need an hour. I was like, okay, fine. Waited an hour. I was like, are you good now? Because I really I don't really have time. Like I'm in Mexico right now. Like, could we just get this out of the way? I'm sorry, man. I'm not gonna be able to play. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be away for the whole week or whatever, this and that. Like now I don't have any time. I speak with Matt about it. He's like, oh, you guys could just play Thursday. I'm like, that's when playoffs start. He's like, no, don't worry about it. You can play. And I was like, that's so stupid. I'm not gonna do it. And he was like, so he gave me the forfeit loss. And I was like, Matt, why did I get the forfeit loss when I was actually there for the game? He's like, I said you guys could play, and then you said you didn't want to do it at that time. And I was like, okay, fine. Convenient enough, played him in the first round. So that was like I was so happy to play him in the first round. I did not care if I won in the playoffs or not. I just wanted him to lose in the playoffs at that point. So, but you grew in everything, right? But we had our game. What I don't know if there's a mon in that matchup that made you struggle, but has there been any mons in general that you like struggled with, or you struggle with in general, and you don't understand why? Whether it's a top tier mon or just some random
buddy.
mon.
There's this. I'm just ashamed to say this on the internet, but Darkrai. It was Darkrai. I was in this league in the ASL.
Uh-huh,
Darkrai. I was the last pick.
uh-huh.
I was the wheel pick, and somehow it was a tier based. Um, it was a tier based draft, and I got somehow Darkrai got to me, and people will say like it's like a middle ground between people saying it should be banned or it should be highest tiered and like Proptia decks, not decks, whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I saw it aloud for the first time like ever, so I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. Let me get Darkrai. Let me 6-0 everyone.
Mhm,
Let me nasty plot it up, choice scarf it up,
mhm.
and it didn't. I had 5 other kill leaders. Like I had 5 months in the kill leader before Darkrai. I had a Venomoth, Mega Camerupt, Salamence, Rillaboom, and Hitmonlee over Darkrai. Darkrai was the second to last. Like it's the second worst Pokemon I had. And it's one of my favorite legends. I think it is my favorite legends too, so it's like so
Mhm,
disappointing. That and Tornti I don't like. I mean I like Darkrai, maybe like I can play better sometime in the future.
mhm.
But yeah, no, it didn't work out.
What about in the sense of a mon that you struggle playing against? Like someone
Playing
else uses
against.
this mon for whatever reason, doesn't matter how good you are or how good your team is, this mon just stays giving you problems as like an opponent.
Well, it's basically like in the beginning part of draft. It's definitely like any good defensive mod that where the coach knew how to
Mhm,
like EV their mods properly. I think Hippowdon is an example of like mod that I couldn't really break at all when I first started to play because I didn't realize that when you're bulky phys def or spec def, you're not both bulky on both ends. You're usually only bulky on one end, and that's something in draft and of course like OU. Like I forgot playing in OU, but and also forgot in draft that like I keep on forgetting that people can EV their mons a certain way to have an advantage, and that kind of sucked for a little bit. I felt like an idiot, but once I got the hang of it after like my first couple of games,
mhm.
Hippowdon was still a problem, but much, much easier to deal with.
It's a way different problem to handle when you realize like, hey, I actually have to I have to prep for certain sets that, it doesn't have to just be 252, 252. And it's like, oh, I one shot it on the special side. It's now the mon could just run it every way, and it's definitely it's definitely the biggest learning lesson. I would say that's probably the one thing like new players learn the most is people can invest in, especially in draft. Like defensive mons tend to be one of the first things that give people problems in draft. And um, gonna yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely that's definitely probably the first like learning curve for a player is figuring out how to handle bulky mons, especially if
What
they
about
have
you? What was like when you first started draft? What was your like what mods did you struggle against?
golden. Well, not as much when I started because when I started this wasn't out, but currently golden go. It doesn't matter what team I have. I could have Chan Pao, Golden Go, Kanatara. The Mon will always give me problems. That Mon puts yellow magic on my team. I'm going to get paralyzed. It's a Mon that forever has given me issues. Suicune and Mega Scizor. I think those two, because they always seem to be paired together, I would never be able to break teams with those two. No matter, and I used to draft hyper offense. And for whatever reason, I didn't know how to make like proper reads and stuff. I didn't really, have good pivoting on early teams that I used to build. and I would just get blitzkrieged. I like those two, not blitzkrieg, the opposite. I would just get sat on by that fat. Those two would, Scissor would just roost up and U-turn, and then Suicune would just come in and tank hits with lefties and toxic my whole team and proceed to, I didn't understand counter prepping enough in the sense of how do you take advantage of another mon's weaknesses? And that was probably like one of those first like learning lessons for me, right? Where it's like that's where you're not prepping for just what your mons can do to them. It's how do you handle what they can do to you? Because in terms of like other mons, I'm trying to think early on in draft. Like Dragapult was always annoying, but I felt like for the most part handled Pulse fine. You
I
know.
actually never saw. I mean, I know Dragapult is OPE. It's good in draft. It's like probably the best draft mon in the format that usually isn't banned. But I never struggled with Dragapult. I don't know if I'm lucky or I'm just that good.
You're the goat. No, I don't. Again, Dragapult's great. It depends. You see, when I used Dragapult recently, I used it more as like a support Pokemon, as opposed to like this like uber offensive threat. So even though it didn't always put up a lot of big stats, it would like set up screens for my team. It would burn things. It would do so many things, and I was like, I kind of like that's the best way to run this mon because it has so much good like support moves, and it has pivoting, and it has like great coverage, and just like it doesn't really need that much in the offensive stat investment. And I almost like when I was because them and I were doing it as a duos league. We had Dragapult, and he's like still uber offensively, like let's hit as hard as possible. And I was building with it, and I was like, man, I feel like the way to build this is speed creep, but you need a creep, and then everything else you invest in your bulk first for the hits you want to live, and then whatever you have remaining, you invest in your attacking stats. You almost with that mon, I think every single week I would invest in 5 of the 6 EV stats. Like I put a little bit in speed depth, a little in defense, a little in HP, but not a lot in speed with a speed nature, or a decent amount of speed with a speed nature, and then the rest would just be spread across. And sometimes all 6 stats if I wanted to run some like mixed stuff. Like that as a mon to use, it's like super fun, but it's definitely like it's got a little bit of you got to think a little bit when you use it against better players. And
There's some
outside of
like the.
yeah, I
Oh,
don't know.
sorry.
In terms of other ones, I would say Suicune and Suicune and Mega Scissor for me were those two were forever gonna haunt me.
Yeah, that sounds like a nasty pairing. I could had a hard time dealing with Rotom Wash and Mega Scissor together. So I
I
can't
thought
imagine how
that
bulky Suicune would be.
yeah, Suicune was I don't know. I just never I used to always say to myself, I'm like, man, it's like I always miss out on 2 KOs with this thing. It just would always live. Like it's just so bulky. Well, definitely one of the best classic, bulky mons ever. Um, yeah,
What would
just
you say is like the best Pokemon, that most reliable Pokemon you would have in draft? Like you can always rely on this to take a hit or two and always try to
Tangela.
draft it when you can.
It's Tangela.
Tangela.
Dude, I don't know what it is. I don't even that's like a mon I never even complex EV spread. I just like 252 its defense and HP, and I'm like, this thing just lives a hit from whatever I need it to live a hit from.
Tangrowth is one of my favorite mons, like to use competitively ever. So I mean, just to probably got the
I,
budget, right?
yeah, no, Tangrowth's amazing though. Tangrowth has offensive coverage that Tangela wish I could have. I don't know what it is. Tangle is like one of those funny mons that just always I draft it so much too. It's my obsession with drafting that mon is like should be studied because it's disgusting how much I draft it. I always just say like regen on like regen on that mon is like so broken. It just you just solve so many issues with it. In terms of like other bulkier mons, I'll be honest. I always generally draft bulky mons like in the midish tiers. I don't like investing big points on a
Oh yeah,
bulky
me
like,
too, for sure.
or something. I loved Mega Venusaur when I used it. Mega Venusaur to me was like a perfectly built mon for me. Just perfect defensive stats, good offensive stats. But I don't want things to. I usually don't draft defensive mons to like just sit there and tank hits and That's all they do. I usually like to draft defensive mons that can, hit back hard, like bulky, tanks and stuff. So I like Mega Venusaur because you could invest in its bulk and then invest a little bit in its special in its offensive stats actually, because you could run it either way depending on the week. But it has good coverage too. So again, as defensive mons, nah, it's Tangle is probably number one. But I used Mega Venusaur once, and that was another mon. Loved it. One of my favorites. But
You
I would more likely like bulky waters. Like even if I draft Vaporeon, because I like drafting Vaporeon, I like it because Vaporeon still has 110 special attack. You're not like you could run moves, you could run EV, so people can't just sub up on you. It gets pivoting. It has options to escape. Before Mola got flip turn, I never would draft Mola. I did not want people taunting me and perish trapping me or stuff like that. Like I would do to people with when they had Mola, because you just lose a mon so easily. Like Chansey and Blissey, terrible. Like I
Yeah, I
just
don't like using them at draft at all.
I feel like you just auto lose games with mons like that because people just set up all over them. Um, but that's my opinion. I don't. I think a lot of higher level draft players agree with that. You need to be able to like have mons that hit back hard or could hit back for decent damage. Your bulky mon shouldn't be hitting for 10%. You're better off having those mons hit things for 35, 40%, and being an actual impact on the field both ways.
You want to know my favorite low tier Pokemon? You promise you won't laugh.
Probably not. I said Tangela just now, so
Stunfisk.
Stunfisk is great. What?
Yeah, I love Stunfisk, dude. It's like this. It's such a good anti-Metamon against Tapu Koko, against Zeraora, against Tornti, and like some other like just constantly punishing like constant pivots back and forth with static. I love Stunfisk, and it's usually tiered only like 4 or 5 points max.
No, Stunfisk to me it's a great mon. The electric ground. Rad red it gets water absorbed, so it's it's better in Rad red. But um yeah, no, it's a great mon. I would there's for low tier mons, if you're telling me you're using I don't know, I'm just looking at a low tier right now. If you told me your favorite low tier mon was Butterfree, I'd laugh. But Butterfree is bad, Like there's nothing you can do with a mon like that. A mon like Stunfisk. Stunfisk has a lot of usage though. Like people use that mon as like a good low tier, rocker. It's a electric immunity.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a good
solid.
secondary ground type for sure. It can help your other ground type be more offensive, or
Mhm.
like I had the Chin Pao Eintracht Slowking Clefable Infernape team, and my favorite Pokemon to use was Stunfisk. Always. It was a low tier Terra League with
Uh-huh.
no Terra Blast, but like defensively, it's always such a good lead or a good switch in. It can static anyone all of a sudden, can go stealth rocks. You can like even just fish for moves and just go for toxic. So nice.
Not for sure. It's definitely one of those. It's definitely a great low tier mon in my opinion. Um, so Hunky, we're getting to some of the closing parts of the conversation. Is there anything like that you would like to promote on your end, or is there anything that you want to talk about that you do on the side, or something outside of our league itself that you like to push today?
Not really. I like usually keep to myself, except for these draft leagues. Just
Mhm.
not just focusing on college and stuff, going to the gym, basic, but like true stuff like
Good.
that.
Make sure you keep hitting the gym, dude. You're young. Don't let yourself get lazy there. Take care of yourself. I regret not hitting the gym when I was in college. Again, I was always an athlete growing up. I worked out all of high school and then got lazy in college. And after that, I made sure to get myself back into shape. But it's a nightmare when you're older. When you're younger at your age, it's so much easier get after it, and you know, you have way more energy in your legs, you have way more energy in your body, you could do way more. So
Are you
definitely.
that? Are you really? I don't know. Are you like in your 40s or something?
No, not my 40s, but you know, I'm 31, so I'm definitely quite a bit older
Oh
than
wow.
you are.
Okay. Yeah, like
So
10 years.
I'm 8 years older than Abdem, so he's like around your age.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so and we have a sibling in between us, so that's kind of the person who bridged the gap there. Um, but
Oh
in
yeah.
terms,
Also, before we close,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on guard chop and UU today?
I mean, I think it'll get back to OU in terms of, especially because Excalibur was still it was still in OU for quite a long portion. So Garchomp was seeing zero play. Um, but I think Garchomp will end up back in OU, and I think this is just a temporary fall for the god that I think Pokemon start to hate on, and they
I'm
don't
so
want to see him win.
I was so sad. I woke up and
Funny
something
enough,
fell on me.
Garchomp's not my favorite Pokemon. There's a lot of people who seem to have that misconception because of the Gible profile pic, and probably how
Your
often
Pokemon is Charizard, right?
it's Charizard. Yeah, the Brooklyn Charizards.
Yeah, Brooklyn Charizard. Sorry.
Funny enough, before we close out, how did you come up with your team name?
The Garden State Arbolevas. I just want to create a mon I liked in. Well, I started Draft League at Gen 9, right?
Mhm,
May, June. So I have some favorite Pokemon. I have a Blastoise plushie next to me right
mhm,
now because it helped me in a Renegade Platinum Nuzlocke, but that's a different story. Other than
yeah.
that, my favorite mons are like Crocodile and Freenape, etc. But everyone likes those mons. So I wanted to do something unique. And Arboliva, I think, is my favorite Gen 9 mon. So I just decided to go with that. And since I'm in New Jersey, it's a natural fit. Garden State, grass type Arboliva.
I assumed you were in New Jersey because the Garden State. I'm in New York, so I
Oh,
know about the
nice.
Garden State Parkway and the fun driving down there. So,
Like in the city area or like upstate?
what are you talking about? No, I'm talking about like well, the Garden State Parkway. I'm talking about more coming
Oh,
down from, no, going down towards South Jersey, not towards.
okay, okay.
Yeah, not really as much going to up north towards, when you get towards like the city or towards closer towards Manhattan and everything. Well, I guess more towards North Jersey. I think you kind of escaped that. Um,
Oh yeah.
it definitely is a different kind of drive, but it's definitely fun because you get to go pretty fast and outside of dodging a few cops, you'll be all right on that drive.
Yeah, it can be rough sometimes for sure.
Oh, dude, I had some of the worst experiences driving on there. When them and I came back from the beach once, uh, by exit 100, I always forget what beach it is. Um, it took us about, well, there was one random day. It took us almost 4 hours to get home because of traffic and accidents. And I was just like, dude, this is one of the worst. And after a beach day, you did not want to be in a car for 4 hours.
For sure. Everyone hates on New Jersey because that they think that part is like all of what represents New Jersey. But if you go lower down, or even like Central Jersey, some people like me believe Central Jersey exists with passion. It's a beautiful state. People hate on it a lot,
I'm
like me, but
I'll I'll
it's
hate on
good.
it. I'll hate on it for sure, just because it's not New York, and New York's the greatest. But outside of that funny beef,
Oh nah, you're one of those New York people.
you mean the correct ones? Obviously.
All right, bro. How's New York City right now? How's your aquarium right now?
Fine,
Oh,
bro.
okay, that's kind of fucked up to say. Okay.
Well,
Never-
I'm fine. I'm doing this right now, so I'm definitely doing all right. No, dude, it was a mess, dude. I work in the city, and
Mhm.
it was definitely quite it was definitely, dude. It was so fun. I was in the office fine, like I wasn't dealing with it as much, like throughout the day, but we had people who were trying to get to other job sites, in construction for the buildings we're working at, and they would take from the office, they take the subways. There's one dude early in the morning. He goes to this, he leaves the office, comes back literally 2 minutes later. Yeah, subways are closed. There's no way you're gonna get him there right now.
Oh
So
man, I hope everyone is okay from that. It sucks.
yeah, no, I feel like no one ever gets injured or something bad happens really. At worst, there's a few cars that probably break a decent amount of cars that break down because of the water getting in them, but it never seems like overly serious, which is weird. Like
New York is tough. I'll give it that.
New York's the tough. You have to be tough to be here. Like you have to have a thick skin. You have to be kind of a jerk yourself. But New York's the best. It's only honest people, jerks, but honest people overall.
Yeah, that's why I like New Yorkians, or I guess New York people more than someone like somewhere like California. Like I met some California people, man. They're so entitled. I thought it'll be just like chill vibes and everything, but oh God, they're so entitled.
We'll
New
definitely
York
talk.
people are like mean, but they're real, and I to take that any day.
Yeah, it's the best. Look, I grew up here. I love being here. Again, I'm probably gonna end up moving out to Jersey one day when find a nice house for myself that's way more spacious. But I'll
In this
continue,
economy, good luck, man. It's gonna be rough.
and I'll definitely be able to. But for it's definitely difficult for sure though. So we'll get to those points when it comes. I think ultimately though, it's hopefully things work out for everyone though. And stuff. Move Jersey is expensive. Everywhere's expensive though.
Yeah.
Even in these traditionally cheaper areas, they're really going up in pricing, and it's a different economy. But we'll leave that talks for the economists who know more than both of us. Hunky, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. Thanks so much for having this conversation with me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for letting me be in the SGBL podcast.
Anytime, man. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.